1 in 5 women, 1 in 5 men, 1 in 5 people will experience a mental health condition during their lifetime. Mental health conditions will affect those close to us, those we love, those we work with, our friends, neighbors, and our families. When a mental illness touches one of us, it impacts the whole family. This film is an introduction for families who are just beginning their journey. We will share the experiences and insights of the many families who have made the journey before you.
There are positive things that are out there, but there's also some challenges that families face. One being is self-care. That's why we promote self-care, because they're often worried about taking care of someone else all the time, that they burn themselves out, and that causes more stress. So that could lead to family violence sometimes. It could cause disturbance in the work environment. For instance, if a parent has a child with a mental health concern and they're constantly just focusing on the child, because it's an innate thing for parents to want to take care of their children. However, they neglect themselves. And in return, they come home being angry, frustrated, and then sometimes yell at the kids, not realizing that they're doing that just because they're frustrated. And that starts to really affect the family and break that support up. So I would say self-care, especially for parents, is difficult.
A lot of people who have family members who are dealing with mental health, teenagers especially, do not deal with it in healthy ways. And especially with the students that I work with who have had experience with mental health issues or who have had family members experiencing mental health issues, you start seeing missing class a lot. You start seeing getting into fights at school or outside of school. You start seeing reckless relationships, reckless sexual activity. You start seeing sometimes criminal activity. You start seeing basically anything you can label a kid as a bad kid. You start seeing those behaviors, usually in my experience anyways, with students who are dealing with mental health issues in the home.
Looking back in retrospect, I've been a little angry. Not angry at him, and not angry at the person, the whole accident, but the situation. It seemed like I was so angry at the situation, and it consumed me, and it was a tough thing for me to deal with.
I realized years later that I think I was quite cynical. I basically kind of was, as a kid, I was kind of at war with life, and at war with the fates, and at war with God, and at war with any situation with the universe that could have basically taken an innocent, lovely, wonderful person and given her this condition. I didn't understand the justice of it or the logic of it, and the fact that that's the kind of world we lived in made me really angry.
You get frustrated because they're not happy, and it's not something that they can just get over and break out of it. It's an ongoing thing that's a long-term thing, living with depression or living with schizophrenia. And you get burned out sometimes because you just feel exhausted from repeating yourself or trying to do the things for them or helping to support them. So it's frustrating. You get burned out, you get tired.
One of the things I tell family members is the first person that you need to take care of is yourself. And immediately the guilt factor sets in. I'm a mama bear. And if someone were to say to me, put yourself ahead of your child, I would think they were absolutely, out of their mind crazy. That's the silliest thing. I would never do that. But the reality is, in a family where mental health is involved, you need to put your health as a family ahead. Because how well will that family member be if you are not? Especially if you're a primary caregiver. If you don't take care of yourself, how can you possibly expect to take care, guide, assist, support your loved one who is ill. So we tell families to look after yourself. Take care of yourself. It's okay to have a life. You're entitled to take a vacation. You're entitled to laugh. You're entitled to have happy days. You're entitled to be able to sleep at night and not have to worry. It shouldn't be as much of a burden. Some families learn how to manage that. Some families don't.
Focusing on a healthy lifestyle has been very, very important. I think a regular exercise regime, healthy, a very, very focusing on nutrition, focusing on being active, staying active, avoiding alcohol, cigarettes, focusing on a very, very healthy lifestyle. We're very fortunate that our son doesn't drink and he doesn't smoke. And we emphasize and model a healthy lifestyle. We work out together at the gym. Very, very important. Very, very important as a way to reduce stress and as a way to induce a sense of well-being.
Well, the first thing is to realize that the only person you can save is yourself. So that's an important thing, to know what your limitations are. You can offer people support, guidance, but ultimately each person is responsible for their own recovery. That's an important piece. I think for family members, like siblings, often feel like overlooked in all of us. So if you're a parent, many times just to have some compassion for yourself, because many family members explain that all their energy goes to the person who is not well. And what about the other people? How to keep it in balance? And sometimes some of the other siblings start acting out. They may think that their sib is putting it on. They may think they're to blame. So there's a lot of responsibilities, and I think it's to say that you're in a very difficult situation. First of all, you've got to try and keep your own head above water. Just look at your own self-care, and then just go slowly, one day at a time. I think what happens with this is that families can start feeling very catastrophic, and it can feel so overwhelming. So going one step at a time can be very helpful and useful. And again, just doing the things that you normally do in your family. That's good for the family, but it's also good for your loved one who is not well, because when they start becoming cognizant what's really wrong with them, if they feel that they've impacted that family to such an extent that the rest of the family is in a disarray, that causes a lot of difficulty.
It's very seductive to become a professional caregiver, to have it take over your whole life, to become just the way we say to people with the illness, you are not depression, you are not bipolar disorder. You experience it, you have it, but you're not it. With family members, you are not just your loved one's caregiver. That is not you 24/7, which means that sometimes you need to say, you know what? I need now to stop. I need to replenish myself. And that's a very hard message to hear.
When you are upset, when you are angry, when you are hurt, maybe not lash out at the person that you love who's triggering it, but know to step away and allow to heal yourself, allow to care for yourself. Because if you've got a family member suffering from mental illness, and on top of that you're filled with rage and anger and distance, nobody's going to be helped. And allow yourself to have your emotions. Don't bottle it up. But remember that engaging continually, step by step, no quick fixes, but patience, love, understanding, patience towards yourself, understanding towards your own frustrations as well, are elements of healing, not just for the loved one, but for the whole family.
the typical family needs to understand that they need to be patient. Mental illness is something that you really need to adjust to. It affects a family very deeply whenever a family member does suffer from a mental illness. And it's something that we typically aren't prepared to handle. So it's a learning experience, it's a growth experience. It takes a lot of patience. You always got to remember that there's always hope. Typically your family member can get better. There's a lot of new medications on the market that make it easier for people with mental illness to cope with the illness. Certainly not perfect, but it's getting much better than it used to be. But there's a lot of work still to be done.
The turning point for me from anger to acceptance was actually when I went back to school. I went back to school at 26, and that's something that I kind of gave up during that time when my father was going through these things, because it took a toll on me, and I withdrew from university. So I went back to school, and I started to understand and learn about, mental illness, and I started to explore different avenues, and I learned about art therapy, and I learned about supporting family members. So that's what helped me. That was a pivotal moment for me, that I just needed an avenue to give back, to help. I was so angry, and I think that anger came from not knowing what to do, feeling like my hands were tied. This thing is happening, or this situation is happening, and I didn't know what to do. And that kind of feeling helpless kind of led to this anger, maybe even sadness. I know it was sadness. That those kinds of feelings kind of led to that kind of anger. But then as soon as I found out that a way to kind of help and give back, it changed. It was at that turning point for me towards acceptance.
Because my daughter was 16 when she got ill, so she was still in high school. You have all these dreams. I just didn't have any expectations. I just kind of intuitively went through things with her. I let her talk to me at her own pace. I didn't impose my pace on her. And I was really careful not to take all that medical journal stuff I was looking at and superimpose all these formal, things on her. And it was just, she wrote poems. I read them. She did art. I went to art classes with her. I developed a relationship with my daughter. And based on that, we learned to respect one another. Our love grew. And out of that love and respect grew, she let me support her, and then I've learned a ton from her. The manifest your feelings, that's from her. And she's taught me as much as a parent I could ever teach her.
Once, someone puts confidence in other people and opens up in that way, and they, open up to somebody and the response is positive, things start to turn around for that person. And I've seen it with, a few students I've worked with, that once they start to confide in other people, they realize that, hey, this issue I might be going through, or my family member might be going through, is one that I can cope with if I have the proper supports. And at the end of the day, I'm still a normal person. There are just difficulties in my life, and everybody has difficulties in their life at some point. And I think they get rehumanized, because I think at some point the stigma dehumanizes you. So to put confidence in someone else rehumanizes you. And once you start to care about yourself again, your life kind of starts to fall back into place. The pieces of your life kind of start to come back together.
Can't put a formal name on. There's no scientific school about, the power of unconditional support and love as the turning point for mental health cure for somebody. But my belief is that is a huge element of providing solid ground where someone goes, I can't believe that no matter what diagnosis you put on me, what medication, what side effects, what I'm going through, what stigma exists, what I've lost in my life, or job, or career, or money, or regard, or future projection, that doesn't matter to my dad, or it doesn't matter to my mom, or my sister, or my brother, whoever that person is. They look at me, they laugh with me, they're there for me no matter what, and they love me no matter what. So you know what? Maybe life's not so bad, and maybe we can together do something and start building back up. And it doesn't have to get to any level specifically, but it can get better. And I think that foundation of regard is really the true cornerstone of the road to recovery.
The support group helped me tremendously, because without the support group, my goodness, I would be in a wilderness and my son wouldn't have gotten any help. But with the support group, I became a strong caregiver and my son is well looked after.
I think giving people hope is a very important piece. So I think that when people in the early stages, they want to know that there is light at the end of the tunnel, that they may be able, they're going through a hell of a hard time, but they will be able to arrive on the other side intact. And some families even thrive because, as we know, a crisis is a danger, but it's also opportunity for change. And I'm not trying to be Pollyannish about this, but many families do tell those kinds of stories. And I know there'll be one or two in the film which probably will reflect that.
It has been an incredible journey, and it's a journey that will go on for many years. It will have twists and turns. We know we will have ups and downs, but we have experienced how holding on to one another through everything will get us through.
What we try to tell families, or what I've even told families, is you have to pace yourself. Just like you were running a marathon, you have to set your pace and know when you have to push a little harder and know when you have to pull it back. And it is an arduous journey, and often it's a journey without a map. It's like, for some families, it's like taking a hike in the woods in the dark without a flashlight. It's dangerous for some. They trip, they fall, they hurt themselves. They don't know which way is right and which way is left. All they know is that they're in this abyss of darkness. And then all of a sudden, there's a light. And sometimes the light is, they find a place where they can find solace, or they find a place that they can turn for guidance, or somebody educates them, or gives them some knowledge. And the journey begins to get a little bit smoother. And as time goes along and they learn how to work in the system and how to make the system work for them, the journey gets easier. And then sometimes some family members get really lucky and realize that they are entitled to a life of their own as well. And that is a wonderful and glorious thing to see happen. And we're seeing this more and more. Families coming out the other side, and we keep telling them, believe, keep the faith, keep your head up, keep focused on hope, keep putting one foot in front of the other. And it is a tough journey, but we know it is a journey that they can get through with the right help.
And so we're at a stage now where life feels stable, purposeful, challenging. It's always going to be challenging, but we're at a stage now where we no longer feel like we're walking on eggshells all the time. And there was a period of several years when we really felt like we were walking on eggshells, that crisis could occur at any moment, and that was very difficult. But over time, given the recovery process, I think we're now much more confident that the future is not to be feared but to be embraced.
There's very often a cliche where people say, I look back at the pain and the suffering, whatever, as a gift. And people go, yeah, right, that was some gift. The expression that I heard, which for me is very apt, is that this was a gift, but it was a gift wrapped in barbed wire. And if I hadn't gone through that, I wouldn't have met thousands of individuals. I wouldn't have worked with hundreds of families. I wouldn't be here talking to you. So while I would never wish that on anybody, I needed to go there to be here.
I'm often surprised at people's strengths and resilience. And the thing that I find with families is it's like very gratifying work, you know, when people allow you in to get a peek at their world and to share something so profound with you. So there's something, I don't know, very touching about the work. That's what I'd have to say, and which makes it very satisfying, because sometimes some of my friends or peers would say, how do you do this work? Well, actually, it's very life-affirming, and I think that's a surprise. And I don't know if that's been your experience, you know, out of, like sometimes from the ashes, really the phoenix arises, and I think that isn't like a metaphor. I see that.
Families are strong. That's one thing I learned about myself, is that we're really strong. I'm kind of mesmerized that I went through this as a young girl at 16, and then I went through it a second time, and I'm thriving as a person, just as a person, not as a mother, not as a caregiver, just as a person, because I took the steps, I reached out, and I just realized we're strong. And just for families to know that about themselves, and a part of that strength comes from educating yourself on what mental illness is, taking care of yourself, and remembering that you're important, your health's important, your well-being's important, and so you need to take care of that, and that you have it in you to do it.
The one Christmas we did the gingerbread house building with the families, and one family came together, and it was the first time in I think over 6 years that they had actually gone somewhere together as a family, and we watched them build this gingerbread house. And they were laughing, and they were eating candy, and there was icing everywhere and powdered sugar everywhere. And afterwards, the father came up to me and he thanked me. He grabbed me, gave me a big hug, and whispered in my ear that this was the most fun that his family had had in years. Who'd have thought that some gingerbread and some icing sugar could bring so much joy? Their house was lopsided. And he said to me, that's because we know that houses just aren't always straight and perfect. And there was a real moment of joy. And even thinking about it makes me a little emotional, because they were so happy. And I have that photograph of that family on my computer. It's in there, and every once in a while I open it up and I look at it, and I always smile. And I'm pretty sure that they remember that night, and will remember that night for a really long time.